it sure is nice to come home at the end of a long day and enjoy a podcast. But you know what makes the experience that much better? Relaxing with a few puffs of smoke from my McQueen pipe. At McQueenPipes.com, I was able to find the perfect smoking pipe to suit my nerdy, yet dignified sensibilities. I especially love that each pipe is designed and handcrafted by a true artisan, and that all of their pipes are inspired by fantasy books and movies like The Lord of the Rings. Being a bit of a hobbit myself, my pipe is called the Barrel Rider, but they've also got pipes for wizards, rangers, dragon riders, or even goblins. If pipe tobacco isn't your thing, no worries. McQueen Pipes has got you covered with attachments for vaping or even cannabis. Head on over to McQueenPipes.com and use the code BIOGRAPHERS at checkout to receive 15% off of your entire order. Go ahead, treat your nerdy heart to something you'll cherish and enjoy your podcast listening experience in style with a McQueen pipe. That's Mac like mac and cheese and Queen like the band. McQueenPipes.com and use the code BIOGRAPHERS at checkout for a 15% discount on your whole order. Cheers, everyone, and happy podcasting.
I do hope you can see me today from where you are.
Ich bin ein Willi.
If I'm generally anything, I guess I'm generally miserable. This modern world of science and invention is of particular interest to women.
The people, I would say, there is no patent. Don't you patent the sun?
I regard myself as a soldier, though a soldier of peace.
Welcome to the Biographers.
So, yeah, you said life is good?
Yeah, man.
What's going on?
Yeah. A lot of my stuff has not been resolved. But I do have a car now.
Do you?
I do
got
have a
one.
car.
Okay.
I finally have a car. It is a temporary thing. Maybe not even worth announcing on the podcast because it is slightly embarrassing, but I'll say it anyway. We'll see. Maybe this is off script. So
who cares?
Well, when you hear this, okay. So Tony's stepdad. Did I tell you about what happened with Tony's stepdad?
I don't know.
My little brother.
No, I didn't even know your little brother's name was Tony.
You didn't even know my little brothers. You've never met my little brothers?
No. I've only met
fuck?
Gavi like once.
Yeah, like twice.
Twice,
yeah,
maybe. Yeah.
That's weird. Okay, well, my little brother Tony, his stepdad, randomly dropped dead of a heart attack.
Holy shit.
Yeah, crazy. He was like only in his 50s or something like that. Obviously, his mom is deeply upset and fairly traumatized, but Tony is like upset in the way that a kid is upset when a very not great person in their life, up and dies.
Sure.
And he left his cars to Enid, their mom. So Tony was supposed to get JJ's car. And then when he got JJ's car, then the family van was up for grabs because Dad has a car, Mom has a car, Alex has a car. Everybody's got a car.
Okay.
Alex being my other little brother. And so I was supposed to get it. That was supposed to happen like 2 or 3 months ago. But the state was just deciding whether or not his life insurance was going to cover the rest of the car or not. So like everything was up in the air for forever. But I was in the Springs, actually, when Tony called me and he was like, yo, you can have the van. And I was like, are you serious? And he's like, yeah. And I got there and it was really, really sweet. Tony is just the classic, I don't want to call him lazy, but a little bit. He's just the classic lazy teenage boy.
Sure.
Right?
That's okay.
Like he's like a senior and he's like really into photography and he likes hanging out with his friends. And like, this was like a huge, I feel like emotional milestone seeing him do this. But when I got there, in the best way that a teenager knows how, he cleaned the car the best he could in the way that a teenager only knows how. And he handed me the car and he was super, super nice about it. And then right as I'm about to leave, I hear that it was going to be another month until the car was ready. But Tony heard about what was going on with me and he just wanted to give me the car early and he was going to borrow the family's car.
That's very sweet.
Which I felt obviously embarrassed that I was even in that position, but so incredibly happy and grateful and proud of my little brother for being so empathetic and being so kind about it. Because
awesome.
he could have easily been like, well, when the car's ready, the car's ready. Like, but instead, I got the van, and I've never been so happy to drive a vehicle that has 250,000 miles on it in my life. It was like what we were talking about where you said your favorite thing you've ever drank is a soda. It's because you couldn't keep anything down.
Yep.
This is like I have like an intense like bonding experience with this van.
It has 250,000 miles on it.
It has 250,000 miles. And of course my dad is like, Papa, it's fine. It's going to last forever. And I'm like, dude, this is going to last me maybe, hopefully, until I have enough money for another car.
And what kind of car? I know it's a van, but what kind of van?
It's a minivan, like total mom van, like Honda Odyssey, navy blue, sun bleach on the top of the car. Sure. Like exactly. Just you've already pictured in your head. I didn't even have to describe it to you.
Yeah. You know that I'm a staunch defender of minivans, right?
You know what? I was just talking about this with Shalena. Sometimes popular things are popular because they're good and not just because they're popular. Minivans are that way. Like, yes. Yeah. Is it the sexiest car? Absolutely not. No. Is it even remarkable to look at? Certainly no. But man, it is so perfect and utilitarian.
Correct.
And as a person such as myself who loves utility, I love it. Like, you got a little bubble thing in the back so you can see all of the passengers in the back of the car. Yep. Sunglasses, 7,000 cup holders. I could be drinking 17 drinks at the same time.
Yes.
Sunroof, aux cord, CD, DVD. If you have the DVD player, there was a bougie one that had a DVD player in the back. Yep. This one made in like 2010, so you can even do the coax, like with the red, white, yellow cords. So if we wanted to, we could plug in like a N64 or something in the back.
That's awesome.
And so as like a ritual of like gratitude, because at first I was a little like, oh man, this car's like really old, really high on miles. But it's sort of like a ritual of gratitude. What I did is I bought these scrubby brushes that go on my drill. Yeah. And I got detergent and I did a full detailing from top to bottom.
Sweet.
The old Coca-Cola stains that are in the cup holders in the far back seats because, that's when they were kids. Cleaned those out, cleaned all the loose change out, the random socks and lint and whatever. And I gave this a full scrub down from the top to bottom. And as I did this, I could just feel myself getting magnitudes more grateful. And it made me think about something with, just as a side note, it made me think about something with my knives, which is that maintenance equals care and care equals love and love equals gratitude, which is a lot of the times the things that you maintain in your life, the things that you take time out of your day to make sure they're looking good are the things that you feel the most sentimental about because you're putting some of yourself into it.
Sure.
And then it can take something that's very mundane, like a kitchen knife, and then turn it into something more. Which is I feel like a lot of people who own handmade knives, or let's say you're really into watches or shoes or something like that, that little ritual of maintaining it just makes you all the more excited to have it. And that's how I felt when I was taking care of this car. I was like, wow, this car has been, by the way, solely maintenance by Julio Garcia. So we'll see how long it could go. Love you, Dad. But just that, like I said, that sort of ritual of maintaining it, it made me I'm imprinted on it like a baby duckling, where sure. I just love this dumb mom car so much, and I'm so grateful to have it because then awesome. I don't have to take the bus on Colfax.
Well, first of all, hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Office Hours with the Biographers. I'm Daniel Newman, hanging out with Akiva Miola.
What's up, y'all?
And we're just talking about Akiva's new Whip, which is a minivan. So the reason I am a staunch defender of the minivan, okay, does it look as cool? No, but there is something kind of cool about doing the not cool thing. Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah. It's if you have a Ferrari, I mean, cool, yeah, Ferraris are cool. But then if you have a sleeper racer car that looks like nothing but goes faster than a Ferrari, is that cooler? It might be.
It's kind of cool.
There's an argument to be made. Okay, so that's number one.
Have you ever heard of the truck nuts argument?
Truck I think we might have talked about it, but refresh my memory.
Okay, it's a video essay that I watched talking about why some video game characters are super memorable and others aren't. And it's the idea that you fit in line with the basic standards of an aesthetic, and then you just do one little thing that's like kind of funky, and that's what makes it memorable.
Sure.
Like, for instance, Snake from Metal Gear Solid looks like every other action hero from any other movie, but he has a mullet, and that like makes him memorable in your head.
Or like, I guess I can see that.
Like, you just like throw a little something, and there is a certain dorkiness that comes with the minivan that makes it memorable and nostalgic in your head. Do you know what I'm saying?
I do, but I'll go a step further and say it's not just the nostalgia of it. It is, okay, so really what we're doing here, what we need to do is compare it to an SUV. Okay, because that is really the main comparison that you have to make.
Those are the two in competition with one another for a regular household in America.
Correct. And now, do SUVs look better than minivans? Maybe most of the time, but there are definite exceptions to that rule. Like,
I agree
that just some SUVs look absolutely disgusting, right?
I have a problem with SUVs. Like, why would you buy and keep? Hold that thought. But why would you buy a luxury SUV?
Oh, I know.
It's the saddest thing. When I see like the Ferrari SUVs or like the
Lamborghini SUV.
Yes. I'm like, this from across the street looks like a Honda. If you're going to get a Lamborghini, get a fucking Lamborghini, man. Like, what are we doing?
I'm totally with you. So again, if we're talking about the looks department, I would say generally speaking, yeah, SUVs are going to look better, but there are exceptions to that rule. Number 2, you can fit more stuff and more people into a minivan than you can into an SUV. There is no question about this, right?
Yeah.
Then you add to the fact that minivans get better gas mileage, no ifs, ands, or buts, right?
A lot of the times, yes.
No,
yeah.
it is almost universal unless it's a hybrid SUV or whatever. I used to sell cars, and I remember that being one of the biggest selling things for when families would come in and be like, well, we're kind of looking at this one. And I would go, have you actually considered a minivan? Because it'll give you everything you want, and it'll give you better gas mileage, and you can get it for a lower price. And they'd be like, huh. Okay.
Dude, you've just cracked the vein on a soapbox that I personally have withheld for all of my life, which is van superiority 100%. Vans are the actual, like, have you ever heard of the recarcination? Have you ever heard of that?
No.
So it's this thing that's been going on around the internet that all things return to crab, which is not true, but the internet likes to talk about it. So, lobsters, crabs, all crustacean, if you look throughout their evolutionary period, there is a point where they look like a crab and then they diverge away from a crab and then they return back into crab shape. And a lot of like evolutionary scientists, fair if you're listening to this, please don't quote me on this, will be like, well, it's because it's like a super functional shape and you just can't get away from the most functional shape. And a van is that. Like, people are like, oh, but what about a truck? A truck is a great thing. No, it's not. If you are a worker of any kind, you work with your hands. Unless you are picking up trees, like things that just physically cannot fit inside of a van, you should have a van because you don't have to tie down your stuff. You can lock up your toolboxes, everything inside immediately.
Yep.
If it's a passenger van, you can fit the most amount of people for the least amount of gas. And, oh no, there's something too big, get a roof rack. You can put the roof rack on the van. So if you have a really big piece of plywood or something like that, you could just put it right on top of there. If every other country in the world uses vans for handymen, uses vans for passenger transport, but here in America, we just have this boner for like off-road cars and trucks and like just souped up, like it's like wrestling versus actual fighting, right? Like this is like it, like the trucks are performative versus like a van is like it is in my opinion the apex vehicle.
Well, and I also have always thought it was really funny about trucks where like people that get them lifted, or even Jeeps that get them all lifted with the crazy expensive suspension and everything. Anybody out there, I'm going to ask you this question. When was the last time you saw one of those types of lifted up vehicles with a crazy off-road suspension that looked in any way like they had been used for that purpose?
There's only one answer, and it's roofers. And the reason why is because roofers tend to make a lot of money, and they have to blow all that money at the end of the year so they don't have to pay taxes on it. So if you look at roofers, they tend to get the lifted stuff.
And maybe it is, but I'm just saying, but that I can, oh man, I don't know what the statistics
also,
are.
Like,
the amount of people, though.
As somebody who. Oh, go ahead.
Let me finish.
I'm so heated about this.
The amount of people, though, that I will see that have the lifted up cars, and they're not roofers. They just are like, no, man, because, off-roading and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, but they'll go, quote unquote, off-roading on basically a dirt road. And there is absolutely no reason to have that type of lifted suspension. They always look pristine. There's just no need for it.
Or they go to Moab like once a summer, and that somehow validates the $60,000 purchase.
And even then, they go to Moab once a summer, and what do? Well, they just, there's that little dirt road we got to go off real quick that's like a mile long, and it has like a rock or two that they got to just like go slow over, and then they camp out of their car kind of a thing, which I have no issue with car camping.
Which, by the way, if you have a van, you just put a bed in it, and it's a camper van. Like, you can build it out, sure, but like, once again, it's already a closed, locked space. You don't have to put a tent on top because the tent is on the inside. It is a tent.
I agree.
It's a tent with wheels. And like, and also lifted trucks, for those of you who are out doing blue collar stuff, I'm not sure what demographic we have here, but any of you who are doing blue collar stuff, tell me why you want a lifted truck when you have to load things in and out of that truck bed.
I know.
The thing is like nipple height. You want to lift sandbags all the way up to your chest? Like, versus like if you go to Europe, Japan, the global South in general, they got those little K cars, and like it's like you could roll that shit on with a skateboard. It's perfect.
I'm with you. I would say 95% of the time I am staunchly against trucks. One, all of you truck drivers out there, and I'm talking about like pickup trucks, right? The modern day big old pickup trucks. If you're not aware of this, everybody else hates you on the road, without exception, okay? Because
we have to make a compilation video of us talking about this throughout the last year and a half.
Drive like a bunch of assholes. Like, the road rules don't apply to you.
The LED lights too, directly into your.
Oh my god, yeah. You rage past everybody else because you're just like, I'm in a truck, and what are you gonna do? Ding my rims? Me. You are total assholes. Nobody likes you. I'm just letting you all know. Sorry if that offends you, but it's just the truth.
They probably don't care.
And then 5% of the time, there's people that actually have trucks because they need them. You're fine, and they tend to actually
just leave them alone. Those are some tough
timber
motherfuckers
and stuff in there, and they're using it for their tools. And there's toolboxes, and they look like they're used as trucks. They're a little bit beat up. I support you.
Yeah,
it's the
Ford
super
Ranger from like
shiny
2002.
100%. My dad had a 95 Ranger.
Beautiful.
For like 15, 20 years, something like that.
It's a gorgeous car, so utility built. That, like, if you're a landscaper, if you're somebody who does regularly carry stuff that is way too big, lawnmowers, stuff that like has to be loaded back up and off and all that stuff, Ford Ranger, perfect choice.
Totally agree.
I can even imagine, I'm not sure if maybe he even used his personal vehicle for this, but your dad was an Imagineer for Disney.
Yep.
I can totally imagine him like throwing props or something weird in the back of the truck that just like wouldn't fit in a regular conventional van. As he's like moving it between workspaces.
He never had to do that because the stuff that he worked on was always housed in the little places. If he ever run anything home, it'd be like a little clay sculpture that would sit in the front seat with him, kind of thing. But he is a project guy still. He's not dead. He is a project guy still. So he would always load up his truck with like, he had to go over to Home Depot and grab some 2x4s to build a thing, and
that's respectable.
Whatever else.
I bet you if he had a van, he'd be like, come on, really, a van? And then 2 weeks in, he'd be like,
no,
man,
we
had a
minivan. We had a minivan. It was a Chevy something or other, and we had that thing for probably over 10 years. And it was the first car that I drove because that was like the family car kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And it was like, did it look cool for me to drive in? No, but I could pick up all of my buddies and then some. We could all pile into the van.
When we got the van.
We could all be driving around. We would go take our little road trips, and it was like it worked, dude. Whereas like if I had a little Corolla, I can't do that. You know?
Yeah.
So
exactly.
Again,
like me and the Derby team. So this weekend, Shalena's playing in Longmont, and I was like, sick. We'll just have all the Derby folks roll up, grab their gear, we'll throw it in the minivan, and we'll all just like road trip together, blast some music. Like, it's perfect. It's a perfect memory making vehicle.
I agree.
For residential, and then I think for work also super slept on here in the States.
I agree, man. I am full support of the minivan. Anybody out there who's driving a minivan, I support you too.
Yeah.
Keep rocking
Van
them.
superiority, man.
Have you ever seen This is a random one, but it made me think of this. Have you ever seen the Dana Carvey show from back in the 90s? It was only on for one season.
I've seen a couple clips of it, yeah. I haven't watched through the whole thing.
So one of the clips, which by the way, if you look back on it or whatever, the amount of people that came from that show that had their start on that show, it's amazing.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
like Robert Smigel, who's Triumph the Insult Dog. That's Robert Smigel. Mm-hmm. Stephen Colbert was one of the writers and actors on
Colbert,
it.
which,
So
by
was
the way,
Steve Carell.
it is. Maybe we don't have time for it on this episode, but it is a shame that they are canceling his show, and it makes me so upset to hear about it.
We won't get into it, but I'm right there along with you, and I'm sure there's going to be some other avenue that he's going to find because he's just too talented to keep down. But anyhow, in that show, one of their segments, it was Steve Carell and Dana Carvey, and they did a thing called Germans Who Say Nice Things, and they would literally just shout nice things in a German accent. So they would say like, "It was a pleasure babysitting Kevin." Like that one. And then one of my favorite ones was they would say, "Let's all pile into the minivan and get some frozen yogurt."
Yeah, man.
Good stuff.
Van
I mean, come
Superiority.
on. And that's the minivan for you. So,
Wholeheartedly agree. What do we got on the agenda this time?
well, we do have quite a few little corrections and fun facts and all that kind of stuff.
I have a couple written down myself too. So
Cool. So, we'll kind of get into it. I guess, why not? We got time. Okay. So again, this is questions, comments, corrections. And again, for anybody out there that's listening and maybe here's one of our series and says, that's not true, I know a thing about this, and here's an article or whatever, send it our way. That's going to be at thebiographerspodcast@gmail.com. So again, any questions, comments, corrections, send them our way. But a couple that I identified, and we do this a lot throughout the series, I'm sure you guys know, which is we'll be talking about something and one of us will ask a question and we go, I don't know, we should put that into office hours. So that's what we got here.
Mm-hmm.
And I should also...
I love the corrections. Anybody reach out if you got anything. I love to be corrected. So,
and I should also give just a quick little shout out to my friend and coworker, Jeff. I didn't know because he and I had talked about the podcast before and he didn't tell me. And then I got a text like a week ago and he was like, dude, now I know all of the things about the Dumas family. He listened to the full series of Alexandre Dumas and loved it, and he wanted to give you some kudos, so I wanted to pass that along to you as well.
Oh,
Kiva.
good. I'm so glad that he went down that rabbit hole. The Dumas family is kind of legendary. There's also another Alexandre Dumas after Alexandre Dumas and Alexandre Dumas, who was also a writer.
Didn't know that either.
Yeah, the grandson.
But yeah, I just thought that was cool, and now I think he said he wants to move on to like Pancho Villa or something like that, so...
Nice.
Anyway, I just thought that was cool and wanted to let you know. I also he indirectly gave me the feedback that I say your name too fast. So I think I need to slow it down and say Akiva Miola because I go Akiva Miola. And he was like, "Dude, what's your co-host's name?" And I was like, "Oh, it's Akiva." And he was like, "Oh, okay."
That's so funny.
Anyways, I just thought that was funny.
That's hilarious, actually. I like that.
Yeah. Okay, so getting into it here. First little correction or illumination that I was able to find. In part 2 of Alexandre Dumas, Kiva, you and I talked about New Year's traditions, and I said my mom would make black-eyed peas, if you remember.
Oh, yes, I remember this.
And I didn't know why or what culture it truly came from. And there was even a point where I was on like a team meeting that I had with my company, and somebody said it was an Irish tradition. And I was like, I've never heard that being an Irish tradition. I don't know where
Yes, I remember you were like, this is 100% like probably like a Southern African or something like that.
Okay, so check this out. I did a bit of research on it, and apparently it is a Southern United States tradition, and it is not specific to any other country. So it is specifically the Southern United States, okay? Now, with that in mind, we don't actually know where that tradition came from. So there's one popular theory is that during the American Civil War, General Sherman of the Union Army marched his troops to the sea in December of 1864, and he subsequently ransacked and pillaged all the way through, I think he like burned down Atlanta, basically.
Yeah.
And that was all to, do this scorched earth campaign against the Confederacy. And along the way, supposedly, he did a lot of like pillaging of supplies and food. But supposedly, according to this legend, he left behind the black-eyed peas as they were considered animal food. This then made the Southern armies feel lucky to even have those black-eyed peas, and a tradition was born. However, this claim is pretty adamantly refuted by most historians.
Yeah, it's a little too neat. It's a little too neat of a story.
Correct, as there is a lot of documented evidence that General Sherman also took a ton of animal food, right? Because they have horses and stuff they got to keep fed. They even have to feed like pigs if they want to have meat and all that kind of stuff. So it just didn't really make a lot of sense for him to leave behind animal feed along that process. So again, it just doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, and it's not likely that he would leave the black-eyed peas behind. Now, the alternative, and in my opinion, much more likely source of the tradition comes from former slaves, obviously, who had been emancipated and saw the black-eyed pea as a symbol of that emancipation. Black being freed from the white.
I can totally see that.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of reminds me of like in Judaism during Passover, we have like these foods that are supposed to remind us of like, you know, our history of enslavement in Egypt, where you have the like haroset, which is mashed up apples and juice and a bunch of stuff, and it's supposed to look like mortar because, you know, we were bricklayers, right? And for them, the black-eyed peas is kind of like symbolic in kind of a similar sense. That's cool.
Correct. And even further, given that the Emancipation Proclamation went into effect on New Year's Day, it is very likely that the now freed slaves celebrated, consumed the black-eyed peas, and from then on ate them as a yearly celebration of their freedom and as a way of bringing in good luck.
Oh, that is so cool. Like that's so sweet and wholesome. I love that.
It makes a lot more sense, except for the fact that when you back up from it, it was like, yet another thing the white man took from the black man.
Yeah, okay, kind of like true, actually.
All the southern United States are like, well, now we're going to do it too to bring in good luck. And it's like, oh.
Yeah, we're going to eat these even harder than you.
Right? Which, okay, whatever. Don't get mad at us, people. I'm just making a joke here. Gosh, don't call us woke or whatever, Jesus. But
yeah,
I
cultural osmosis is
right.
is
I
really
just think
what
it's funny that is kind of what happened. It bled over into the entire area.
That's funny.
So, yeah, I thought that was a pretty cool one. And given that my mom is born and raised in New Orleans, it makes sense. That totally
checks out that she'd picked that up from some neighbors or something like that.
Or whatever. It's just the area eventually over 100 years just started doing it. And or I bet you anything, stuff like potlucks started to happen, right? Where it was like New Year's
like,
potlucks.
Man, that's good. I gotta make this.
Let's make it. Oh, why do you do this? It's good luck for the new year. Oh, cool. I'll do it too. And it just turned into a thing. I think that's probably what happened. Hopefully, my innocent heart, anyways, wants to believe that was the case.
Oh, yeah. It probably is. That's awesome.
So.
That's cool.
So there you go. There's the black-eyed peas one.
Yes, I'm happy with that one.
Okay, number 2, also in episode 2 of Alexandre Dumas, we briefly talked about Olympic medalists. And Akiva, you thought that they had to buy their medals. This is not true, at least not for the United States. And in fact, Olympic medalists not only pay 0 taxes on them, but are even paid a cash bonus for each medal they receive, which I did not know. Okay. So, for the 2024 Olympic Games, U.S. Olympians received $15,000 for a bronze medal, $22,500 for a silver medal, and $37,500 for a gold medal.
Man.
So basically $40,000, no tax for anybody that wins a gold medal, which I know.
And how many gold medals does Michael Phelps have? That he's probably got close to like...
Oh, I got some math for you, buddy. I did
let's do it.
Of math on this. Okay. And again, that would have all been tax-free, as in 2016, President Obama signed the United States Appreciation for Olympians and Paralympians Act into law, which made Olympic prizes and bonuses tax-exempt. Now, those numbers that I just said, the $15,000, $22,500, and $37,500, those were increased in the 2024. That was the first time that it had been those amounts. Yeah. So from the year 2000 all the way up until then, Olympians received $10,000 for bronze, $15,000 for silver, and $25,000 for gold. So
that's good. Not crazy good, but good.
It is, but it makes you rethink Olympic categories. Because check this out. This means that Michael Phelps, through his career in the Olympics, received, in the year 2000, $105,000. In the year 2004, $170,000. The year 2008, $200,000. 2012, 130,000, and 2016, 140,000, which brings Michael Phelps to a grand total of $745,000 that he received for winning gold medals from the U.S. government.
Alone.
That's Michael Phelps, okay?
Man, that ain't bad.
Now I went even further, obviously, because I'm me. Okay, I'm not going to go through every single one of these numbers because it's too many numbers to rattle off, but I did the math every single year since the year 2000. Okay, so for example, in the year 2000, we had 37 gold medals, which equated for $925,000 from the U.S. government. 24 silver, which is $360,000, and 32 bronze, which goes to $320,000. That's a grand total of $1.6 million. Okay.
Just on medals.
Just on medals from the U.S. government paid out. Now, if we add them all up, so the year 2000, 2004, 2008, 2012, 2016, 2020, and 2024, the grand total that the U.S. has paid out to Olympians in that time is $14,190,000.
Wow. I mean, that kind of makes sense considering we basically are like half of the Olympics. Like,
I agree. It was just shocking that it's basically $15 million, just shy of $15 million we've paid out to Olympians. And I should also say that those first 7 games that we paid out for, those were actually taxed. So we actually took back money as a result from that too, which also seems kind of unfair. So either way, I just thought it was a very, very surprising number.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. And I mean, it's weird because it's both a lot of money and also for an Olympic athlete per year, like you're making about as much as like a pretty decent doctor, right? Like, and maybe even less than these days.
But that's so if you're in the right category, because if you're a pole vaulter and you come in second, right, you're walking home with maximum $22,000 for years of work.
Yes.
Right.
And also, like, if you're not a huge, I imagine it's like once you get to being a primetime Olympian, then like just money accidentally falls into your lap. But if you're like second, third, fourth best, and you don't have sponsorships from Nike or Adidas or some airline somewhere,
right,
then I can totally see it being like, yeah, I'm able to keep doing this, but it's like almost like a working actor where they're like, yeah, I'm able to keep doing this, but it's not like, I'm not like, you need to not put me and Michael Phelps in the same category. Like,
well, that's the thing, is that's why a lot of people, it's not a criticism because it does make sense, but people, you know, oh, who's the greatest Olympian of all time? Michael Phelps, because he's got all the medals. And it's like, well, but he also had more opportunity to compete in more events than anybody else did. Because in swimming, there's different lengths, there's different strokes, there's different team events, there's all this different stuff that you can potentially win money for. So it's like the right athlete in the right category can make a lot of money versus these sort of smaller ones. Like if you think about it, you're like Usain Bolt, who is Jamaican, so I don't know what they pay out, but dude won, he's the fastest man ever, and he probably went home with like $20,000 tops for that effort.
Yeah.
And that's sort of sad to think about. Yeah,
that's where the sponsorships come in. Whereas like they're really, the main goal is to like for like Nike, which by the way, those sponsorships, my mom, I'm not sure if we ever talked about this on air, but my mom used to work at the Olympic Center.
Yeah, that was why we brought it up.
Oh, yes. Okay. And one of the goodies of that was the Olympians would get brand new shoes. And then after 1 week of wearing them, like the second the tread started to get a little rough, they would just get rid of them. So if you could like go to the Olympic Centers, all of like the cleaning service, like all of the staff there will tend to find like this like basically like lost and found bin where Apollo Ono or Michael Phelps or Simone Biles would just like toss some sneakers there, and then they would end up, you know, taking those home. So like me and like I think my Theo used to work there, and he would always have like brand new shoes. And like I remember when I first started wrestling, which, oh my God, I hope that we never get famous so nobody can find old videos of me wrestling, because that's truly embarrassing. But in some of the first videos, I have like the muffs that the Olympians were using, because my mom was like working there and she was like, here. Cool. So I was like, that's kind of cool.
That is cool.
Definitely did not give me any wrestling powers. It was like watching two blind giraffes fight one another.
So it wasn't like Mike? Remember that movie?
No.
You remember that movie? You don't remember that movie?
Like Mike? No.
Oh, it's about I think I never even actually saw it. I only saw the previews, and the previews tell you the whole movie. Okay.
Yeah.
Which is there's these two kids, one's a white kid, one's a black kid, and they grow up in the same neighborhood as apparently Michael Jordan lived in. And there's this legend that he like a lot of kids do, they would tie their shoelaces together and you throw them up onto the power lines, right? There's this legend that his shoes were up there, and they are trying to go get him, and as they're trying to go get him, the shoes get struck by lightning, and then when they put them on, they get Michael Jordan's basketball abilities.
So then, none of that was happening. I got a bronze medal in wrestling, but that was because I lived in a small town.
You told me this.
Yes, I was so skinny that I was the only person in my weight class, one of 3. So just by me being there, I got a wrestling medal. I had 2 matches. I'm not sure if I ever said these stories on air. I had 2 matches that I won, and one of them lasted 6 minutes, where both of us just grabbed each other's legs and hopped around. Like, imagine 2 very gangly teenagers, one person grabbing another one by the knee, both of them just hopping in a circle, like refusing to fall down.
Cool.
And then I beat one person. They blew the whistle, and I noticed this kid just had this vague expression, and I didn't know what to do, and I was like, I'm not a confrontational person, despite like all of the cursing and rambunctiousness that I have. I don't like to fight in any way. So when they blew the whistle, I just froze, and then I remember my coach being like, knock him over, and then I did, and either the kid was blind or severely mentally disabled, and I didn't realize that until after I beat him in his match.
Good job, dude. You should be proud.
Yeah.
I hope that medal that you have is hung up on your wall somewhere where your victory
because when we got up, he just was not making eye contact with anybody and was just kind of vaguely walking back down into the cafeteria area, and I was like, oh my God, no, I didn't. Oh my, no. And my coach was like, I'm so proud of you, son. And I was like, oh my God. So that's how I got my bronze medal, was by knocking over a blind kid.
Good on you. It's the American way. All right. Next one here. Number 3. So this was also from episode 2 of Alexandre Dumas, but we briefly mentioned not knowing that tennis was as old as the French Revolution. That got me curious. So apparently, tennis as a sport can be traced back to the 12th century in France. Okay?
What?
The 1100s. Though at the time, you used your hand to smack the ball across the court. You didn't have a racket. Okay?
Huh.
Now, eventually, they created the tennis glove, which was this leather glove that you would use instead of just smacking it with your hand, so you could actually get more power out of it. And eventually that evolved into a racket. Okay, now the earliest knowledge that we have of a racket being used in a tennis game traces back to the early 1500s in France and was spreading across Europe, even being played indoors. So even by the 1500s, they were making indoor tennis courts because it was so popular throughout Europe.
It's also funny because it's basically volleyball if you're doing it with your hands.
Yeah, I mean, in essence, right? Except that there was some sort of formality to it apparently to where it felt more high class or something like that. But anyways, that basically means that, as crazy as this sounds, tennis as we know it, which is being played on a court with a racket, has been played for over 500 years.
Wow.
Way longer than I would have ever thought tennis would have been played. I would have imagined the 1700s maybe. I'm going to be honest with you. I would have thought 1800s.
Yeah. A racket seems like an industrial made object.
Yeah.
Or something that maybe was handmade a couple times, but for the most part was a production made thing. And then I imagine some Queen of England or something was like, well, I always get my blood pumping with a little game of tennis in the morning. And then British people started doing it or something. But yeah, I was completely dumbfounded when I found out that the National Assembly of France originally was assembling in a tennis court of all places.
Yeah. And you're kind of not wrong, by the way, when it comes to the Queen playing it or whatever, because it was sort of a royal game. Like it just had that air about it where you're right. Like, I don't know this for sure, but if I was a betting man, I'd be saying that original rackets from tennis, and maybe we'll have to put this in the next episode of Office Hours, the original rackets were probably made with cat intestines, because that's what, for the longest period of time, snare drums, the little crunchy noise, that was cat intestines. So they were really rigid, but also flexible at the same time. You could stretch them out really, really far, and they were really, really thin.
Like rawhide almost.
Exactly.
Interesting.
So I don't know that for sure, but again, if I was a betting man, I would say that rackets were either with that or even just like a stretched piece of leather, similar to like a pickleball paddle. Like it wasn't, there weren't grating to it. It might have just been like a single piece of thin stretched skin, like a drum kind of a thing.
Yeah, because wire wouldn't really cut it.
Well, because they also couldn't really make much wire back then.
Yeah, wire was hard to make.
Really, really hard to make. So, yeah, I don't think that would have been the case. So
interesting.
Anyway, there you go. 500 years old as we know it, but technically speaking, if we're talking about tennis, it does trace back to the 1100s, which is crazy to me. Like,
that's insane.
Yeah, by that stretch, it's closer to 900
The Vikings were invading England at the same time that the French were like, let's play tennis.
Yeah, like 100%, which is pretty insane. So, okay, next one here. Again, all of these have so far been from episode 2 for some reason of Alexandre Dumas. So this next one as well. So we talked about Thomas Jefferson being the U.S. ambassador in France during the French Revolution, and I wasn't really sure when Benjamin Franklin was, because I knew he was as well, and we kind of talked about it, but I wanted to make sure the timeline was established. So Ben Franklin was the U.S. ambassador in France from 1779 to 1785, and then Thomas Jefferson took over after that. That was from 1785 to 1789. And the storming of the Bastille took place on July 14th, 1789. So again, it was like right at the tail end of Thomas Jefferson being there, but he was there, and I just wanted to clear that up.
Yeah, I bet you when they started lopping off heads, he's like, I gotta go, man. I'm out of here.
Okay, next one here. This is actually from Alexandre Dumas Part 4, and it might ruffle your feathers, and I'm sorry if it ruffles your feathers up front. And you can do all the homework you want to and tell me I'm wrong about this one. I'm going to say that up front. So,
yeah, it's worth discussing.
Yes. So you talked about the warship, the Orient, the biggest warship of all time, right?
At the time, yes.
At the time, right. And so I was sitting there, and the reason that I thought about this was because I was like, man, I remember I was at some museum at one point, and I saw like under a glass case, somebody had made a model, and it was like the warships that all of Europe thought were big, and then the warships that China was actually making.
You know, I was thinking this when I was reading it. So I'm excited to hear what you said, but I was thinking it as I was reading this. Maybe Rice said the largest in Europe, and I just, as I was doing my research, I was like, largest in the world or something like that, because I was like, we've talked about this so many times before, but like, you know, kings in Europe will be like, I am the new ruler of the world with my army of 2,000 men. We have subdued the Gauls. Right. Versus like China being like, average day, 250,000 soldiers died. Like
I mean, kind of, right?
It was a good war. Only 3 million people perished.
Pretty much. So anyways, that got me thinking, because I was like, well, I don't know. Maybe that ship was just comparable to this one other ship, and I don't really know. So I wanted to look up and see what warships were in terms of size all the way up to that point in history. So the Orient is technically not the largest ship that existed up until that point, okay? Now, I did do specific research to look prior to 1800, because I wanted to make sure that it was like built at the time, because I wanted to see where everything was at. So according to my research, there were at least 2 European ships that were either bigger, or technically about the same size that were more heavily armed. Okay?
Yeah.
So the first, and this one is bigger, it's the HMS Victory of the British Navy. And it is still docked in the UK, and you can go and visit it. And we're talking like a difference of 10 feet. So it's not like it was like, oh my gosh, it's so much bigger, but it was bigger and it was more heavily cannoned. Like it was outfitted with so much weaponry that it was
How many cannons do you know? Do you have the numbers?
I want to say that it was like 126 or something like that. You can Wikipedia it really quick if you want to.
Yeah. I think the Orient was either 120 or 170. I can't remember what it was, but
well, now I'm kind of curious. So if I said HMS HMS Victory. Here we go. So this one, this one is the measurements. No, that's not the right one. Because this one says that it's 186 feet, but I just looked at it a minute ago and it was 223 or something like that. Anyway, it doesn't really matter, but the guns, let's see what it had here. Sail speed, armaments, the gun deck had 30 long guns, 28 24-pounders. It has a whole bunch of them. Height from waterline from 8 yeah, 205 feet is the technical length of it. But anyways, it was these really like technical things of, well, technically it might have been wider and then not as long, but the dimensions make it comparable, if not slightly larger. And then if we're talking about power and firepower, it was better. It was all these very minutia sorts of things. However, and then there's actually one more too, that this one was huge. And you might have to help me on the pronunciation here. It's the Nuestra Señora de la Santísima Trinidad from Spain.
Perfect. Yeah.
I think I'm saying that all right. Mm-hmm. That was another absolutely massive ship around that time. However, a minute ago, I was just talking about the Chinese warships. And the ones that I had remembered were actually from the 1400s and beyond. And this pronunciation I will almost definitely butcher, but I'm pretty sure it's pronounced Bauschwanz. Okay? Mm-hmm. And those official measurements have been lost to history, but the conservative estimates place it somewhere between 230 and 430 feet long.
Oh my God.
With more generous estimates placing them at over 500 feet in length. Absolutely massive.
Man, I've already picked who I'm going to do for my next season, but a big part of me wants to do someone from China, because just the numbers, the scale, the drama, the intensity, it's ramped up to 100% in comparison to a lot of European history. Like,
yeah, dude.
Wow.
You haven't even told me.
Astonishing.
Yeah, you haven't even told me who you're doing next, so don't say it because we got to save it for the end or whatever. But when we're done here, I want to know who you're going to do. So anyways, again, if there are any military warship experts who go, well, actually, Greece was making a ship that was okay, let me know. I don't know. This is preliminary research that I done. This was not a deep dive into all this kind of stuff, but this was the initial information that I found about these warships. So just want to throw that out there.
Yeah, it does kind of take away from the grandeur of the largest warship in the world exploded, but also, yeah, it totally makes sense that China's okay, largest warship in the world. Clearly, you haven't visited us because
hold my beer.
We made this island out of wood. Does this count?
Pretty much. So, anyways, I just thought that was neat.
That's insane.
Okay, last one that I've got here, and then I think you said you might have one or two as well.
Yes.
So last one here. In episode 5 of Alexandre Dumas, I briefly mentioned the Library of Alexandria burning down. And I said something about there was a certain percentage of all known written history, communication, literature, whatever, was inside of that library and it burned down and it was lost. Now, from what I was able to gather, this is a little bit of a not trutheism, right? Where, yes, all of this stuff burned down, but it wasn't necessarily one-off copies. There was undoubtedly loads and loads of literature that was lost when the Library of Alexandria was burnt down. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't, again, all of this knowledge, so much was lost or whatever kind of a thing. There were other kind of copies of it or other versions of these certain stories that were in other places. However, and despite the actual exact number not being known, because there weren't any records kept of how much stuff was actually there, we only have kind of estimates from history. Mm-hmm. They estimate that somewhere between 40,000 and 400,000 papyrus scrolls were lost when it was burnt down, which
that's
equates...
such a big difference.
Yeah, I know, but that's the thing, is that they're
we don't know.
Conservative side could be 40,000, more large estimates say 400,000, we don't know for sure, and that would equate to roughly 100,000 books that were burnt. In the burning of the lighthouse, or pardon me, the lighthouse, the Library of Alexandria. And in case you didn't know, that was burnt down by Julius Caesar, and that was in the year 48 BCE.
Damn it, Caesar.
I know. So, anyway, there you go. There's the little mini corrections that I have.
I mean, that totally makes sense that some things were recovered, and also like that we don't really know much about the scale of it. Also, Caesar specifically had a way with numbers, and that way was typically completely making them up based off of how he wanted to appear.
Sure.
Like, I remember I was listening to Dan Carlin's episode about the, attack against the Gauls and how Caesar made it seem as if it was this valiant war where they were like fighting to the last man, when in reality they were just decimating swaths of, Gaul people, which Gaul is such a loose term to define that area. So yeah, there's no way that we would actually have any accurate numbers there. That makes sense.
So anyways, what do you got for me?
So I don't have a whole lot, but I do have... here, let me take a look at this. So in the last episode, there was 3 things that stuck out to me. The first one was actually a result of me re-listening to Mary Shelley episode 1, where I mentioned how the spread of the revolution was sort of taking flight while William Godwin and Mary Wollstonecraft first got together. And I mentioned that Haiti had just overthrown their British oppressors.
Okay.
So we obviously know from the end of this series that Haiti was fighting against Napoleon and the French forces. They did fight the British in other capacities because the British also had a hand in Haitian slavery and like the Haitian nation being subdued. So they did fight the British, but for the most part, it was like 85% fighting the French and then 20% fighting the British and the Spanish.
Okay, cool.
My second one is I mentioned that Abbe Faria from the Count of Monte Cristo was inspired by a couple different people. I mentioned one of them being a savant that got locked up, and he used candle smoke to write an entire book within the margins of a book that he had brought with him during his imprisonment, and he actually published it and then died almost immediately afterwards. It was on geology. The other inspiration was during Alexandre Dumas' second imprisonment in the newer, nicer prison.
Okay, yep.
And that was with a Italian man named Bonaventura Certeza, who was a devoutly religious Italian man who, despite the fact that Alexandre Dumas was staunchly Republican and not particularly Christian, the two of them became very close friends, and they kept correspondence well after him being freed.
Cool.
So that was my second one.
Very cool.
Oh, last one. This was in episode, I want to say 4, when we were talking about the Battle of Mantua, and then directly following it, driving the Austrians north down the river Tyrol. I mentioned that he was given another nickname at the time by Napoleon, and the nickname was the Horatius Cocles of Tyrol.
Okay.
And Horatius Cocles was basically an officer of the army in the Roman Republic who defended the Pons Sublicius. How do I say this? Pons Sublicius from the invading army, which were the Etruscans. So basically the same scenario happened. He held a bridge against an enemy force. A lot of people would have known the story of Horatius Cocles, and that's how he got the nickname, the Horatius Cocles of the Tyrol.
Horatius. And do you know what that actually means, Horatius Cocles?
I have no idea. It's just
like
his name.
A title. Okay. I mean, I imagine it's something like the Viscount Escher, which I don't know what the hell that means. I just know it's like a fancy title for somebody,
Yeah. It was I'm looking at the wiki page right now. Publius Horatius Cocles was an officer of the army in the early Roman Republic who famously defended Pons Sublicius from the invading army of the Etruscans. With King Lars.
I thought it was a title, not his name. My bad.
Yes, that is his name. The Horatius
Never mind
Cocles.
then. That sounds like a title of somebody.
Yes, it does.
But okay, cool. Well, right on. Those are all pretty fun little factoids there, man.
Yeah, man.
So I think we're probably, I think we're pretty much at time here. I think we have a couple of minutes to spare. Okay. But I will say thanks, everybody, for joining us on Office Hours here. Again, as if you've listened to us before, you know that Office Hours is always a little bit more laid back, a little bit more, we're just talking nonsense for half of it, and then we're going to these fun little kind of corrections here or whatever. But again, if anybody is listening through Legacy Series and you find something that you want to add color to, or if you want to correct us on, or whatever it might be, please do let us know. You can, again, send us an email at thebiographerspodcast@gmail.com. You can also support us by going to our Patreon page, patreon.com/thebiographers. And yeah, I mean, I guess we can also give you your pedestal for a moment for your metalworking.
Yes.
What's going on these days?
So right now, I'm still teaching at Hardy and Fuller. We still have classes all the way booked up until December, but people drop out and move and switch classes all the time, so please look at the websites. I think we have a couple spots open for this coming month. If you're in Denver and you want to learn how to make knives, feel free to go to hardyandfuller.com, and you can get to know me personally, and we can talk about knives and history and how those two things intersect. As far as knife making goes, I still do have knives on the website, metalworkbymiola.com. And if you use the code VAN, despite the fact that we just celebrated the new car, I still have this. I'm going to leave this open until this episode premieres. You can use the code VAN for 20% off any order, which is a significant savings if you're looking at certain knives that I have in my gallery right now. So.
And then worst case, if anybody out there hears this episode and you try out that code and it doesn't work anymore, you can always use the code biographers at checkout. You get 10% off your order.
Exactly.
And you can also, if you wanted to, just reach out to us, and Akiva is always open to talking about custom knives if there was something.
Yeah, if you have any custom commissions.
What was it in the past year? Somebody had you make a sword for them.
Yep, I made a Chinese fencing sword that was like the proto sword for the katana.
It's pretty cool.
And then I've done axes and knives, anything sharp and pointy. I might even take on like a small gate or railing job. So if you're in the Denver area and you have like a 1 or 2 step railing that you want added to the house, let me know.
Sweet, dude. Right on. Well, I guess the last thing that we'll say here as well is I'm very, very excited for our next series, which if you listen to the end of our last episode, you're going to know we're moving on to Mark Twain.
Mm-hmm.
And I do have to be honest, I think it is the most excited I've ever been for a series so far.
Really?
I know it sounds strange because he's not a swashbuckler. He's not a hero, so to speak, or whatever. He's just interesting.
Like full transparency, I have always seen Mark Twain as like a stuffy character, and you're finding that not to be true. What are some little tidbits you can share without giving away too much?
It is literally the exact opposite of stuffy. He was unstuffy in a time of stuffiness, basically. He and you know, we're going to explore this a lot throughout the entire series, but he was one of those people. And I was talking to a friend of mine and coworker named Tanya earlier this morning. Actually, we were having a little meeting, and we were talking about how, you know, Mark Twain is this really great example of, I mean, the guy was born in Missouri prior to the Civil War. His parents literally owned slaves, but he weirdly had this, he was riding this line throughout the first maybe half of his life or so that was like, he was kind of racist. Yeah. But I think a big part of that was because he was raised in an environment that said, it's okay. You should be this way. This is how the Bible tells you things should be, blah, 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 blah. And he was like, okay, I guess that's how it is. White people are better than black people, kind of a thing. But then as he evolved, as he traveled more, as he got to know more people, as he started to see and hear stories from all over the place, from all different types of people, the more that he went, this is nonsense. And he truly gets to that point and that conclusion of just going like, this is so stupid. And I cannot believe I ever subscribed to it. And I would liken it to, and I'm sure a lot of people can, at least I hope, can relate to this as well. I was raised in an environment, a very, very Christian environment that said being gay was not okay. Yeah. It's a sin. You should not do it. God says it's bad.
And then exposure sort of changes you.
100%. Right? Where like, and that is what I believed as a child, right? Because that's what I was told. And it took a long time, even into my teenage years and young adult years, that I was like, I don't know. I mean, I guess it's fine to be gay, but I do still think it's a sin. And then I got further and further and further. And the more that I just went, this is nonsense. What are we talking about here?
It's funny how there are such dead set ideologies,
right?
That are often region based, that just take the slightest amount of exposure. Right. 6 months of hanging out with queer folks or folks from another, like, you know, I remember I had a coworker at an old job who was deeply anti-Semitic, right? Who would use Jew as an adjective.
Sure.
You're Jewing me, don't be so Jewish. Like, literally, I've never even heard anybody talk like that before until I met him.
Sure.
And then he'd obviously didn't know that I was Jewish. And I was like, have you ever met a Jewish person before? And he goes, oh, no.
Right.
And I'm like, that's what it is. That's literally all there is to it.
Right.
It's just the most minor bit of exposure to completely like dissolve a lot of these notions.
Totally. Unless
you're particularly hard set in like, you know, very strict cultural values or something like that. You can kind of retain those to some extent. But if you like, even if you take, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong about this, but if you take a racist living in like New York or New Jersey, somewhere that is culturally diverse, and you take a racist living in a completely culturally isolated place, there's no way that is the same level of potency or the same value structures. Like it just takes exposure. And that's so cool with Mark Twain because he is, I mean, every indication should have just suggested that he would become a very pro-South, pro-slavery sort of person for the rest of his life. And just through this like accidental slipping out of the bag, falling off of the cart, he's kind of developed into something else.
And that was kind of the funny thing is that, and we'll learn this again throughout all of the series, but he was never necessarily a hardcore Southerner. Even during the Civil War, he was very pro-Union, in fact. And I'll tell you some examples of all that kind of a thing. And he wasn't even like a savage racist. He was just sort of like, oh yeah, no, I mean, whatever. You know, I think white people are better. And that was sort of his like just sort of basic mentality, even though he had a really great relationship, as strange as it sounds, with their house slave. This one woman he kind of saw as like a mother figure. And he also spent a lot of times as a kid in like the slave quarters, listening to the slaves tell stories and listening to their jargon. And like, so again, it was this sort of mild racism, if you can call it that, right? But again, as he grew, as he experienced more, it just completely changed, and it went a full 180 degrees to where he was like, any inclination that I ever had of racism is stupid, and we'll see evidence of that when he eventually gets to the point of writing Huckleberry Finn, which is considered one of the greatest examples of anti-racism in history, in a time where a lot of the nation was still grappling with the concept of what it is to be a racist.
Especially in his contemporary time, yeah.
Correct, right. So it's amazing. And then again, to talk about his unstuffiness, not only was he very edgy, and we'll talk about a lot of examples of that, what really put Mark Twain on the map, and this, we won't even get into this until episode 3 of this series, okay, is he eventually writes this thing called The Celebrated Jumping Frog of Calaveras County.
I remember reading that in school.
A lot of people did, all right? And it might sound strange, but and I'm gonna read the excerpt in this because why not? And then you'll also read it again in episode 3. But the way that he wrote language, you'll know what I'm talking about when it's wholeheartedly unstuffy, and he represented how America actually spoke through his writing. So this is a small excerpt of The Celebrated Jumping Frog of Calaveras County, and it's just to give you a taste of how Mark Twain began to influence American literature. So it goes like this. This year Smiley had a mare. The boys called her the 15-minute nag, but that was only in fun, you know, because of course she was faster than that, and he used to win money on that horse for all she was so slow and always had the asthma and the distemper and the consumption and something of that kind. They used to give her 200 or 300 yards start and then pass her underway, but always at the fag end of the race, she'd get excited and desperate like and come cavorting and straddling up and scattering her legs around limber, sometimes in the air and sometimes out to one side amongst the fences, and kicking up M-O-R-E dust and raising M-O-R-E racket with her coughing and sneezing and blowing her nose, and always fetch up at the stand just about a neck ahead, as near as you could cipher it down. That was 2 sentences.
You know what this reminds me of? Have you ever heard of the Historical Shakespeare Company?
No.
So basically, there are these groups of actors and historians who read Shakespeare and say, hey, we have poshed ourselves to now losing some of the humor of like Shakespeare. So they've tried to go through like old texts and recreate how British people talked at the time that Shakespeare was being performed.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like whole jokes that if you say it with the new British accent, go completely over your head. But if you talk like a commoner in the same time, like the Romeo and Juliet, right? Two houses, both alike in dignity, from their fatal loins, from their fatal lions do this, this, and this. When you say it with the old British sort of accent, it almost sounds like piratey in a way. And lions ends up also being loins, depending on how you hear it. So basically, from their junk came these two kids. And that was like supposed to be a joke, but if you read it in like the, now received British pronunciation, it goes completely over your head.
Oh,
and the same with like Mark Twain being like talking like some guy. I was imagining some like old dude with maybe missing a tooth leaning on a fence post, telling you this whole story where you're like, okay, where are we getting with this? Like, like an old man is just like, when I was a kid,
correct.
Which I love.
And it's amazing that you were able to get that all the way from that, because if anybody out there has ever read The Celebrated Jumping Frog of Calaveras County, you know that it's a short story. You can read it in 10 minutes. And I would recommend everybody do that as some homework before us getting into Mark Twain. But it does not resolve. The story does not resolve. It almost trails off in this way where it's from the standpoint of a journalist trying to find a certain person, and through him trying to find this one person, he talks to a guy, and the guy goes, well, I didn't know that guy, but I knew a guy that had a similar name, and proceeds to just word vomit onto this journalist. And before he can even finish the main story, that the Celebrated Jumping Frog, before he can even finish it, the journalist goes, I've had enough, and leaves, basically. So like a big part of it was like, it's not even necessarily about the story itself. It's about how the story is being told and the rambling nature of the minds of these.
Yes. Oh, I want to pick this apart, but we'll save it for the episode, because I already have thoughts about this, and I'm excited to hear it.
It's really cool. And so but that's just an example of what I mean by unstuffy. He was edgy and interesting and wanted to actually write in the voice of the people. And I don't know. I mean, again, I'm excited to get into it because it's all just good and interesting stuff. And there's a lot of good illumination about the times and things like education. And again, there's all these fun little facts that I'm going to save for the series, but that's all coming up. And again, I'm thinking this is going to be a long one, bro. I'll be honest with you. I think it's going to be 8 to 9 parts.
Oh no.
I know.
Oh no.
But I do think it's worth it. And I do think that it's going to be really interesting. I am trimming the fat out of places where I go, we just don't need to cover that. But like, putting together the puzzle of this guy's life, I think is going to be worth everybody's time, especially Americans, because I think it is going to give you a totally different understanding, not only of things like literature and comedy in America, but America itself and how it was influenced massively by this human being. Mm-hmm. So again, I'm trying to trim the fat and not just ramble in places where I need to ramble, but like, it's good stuff, man, and it's, I don't know, I'm having a blast with it, so.
Yeah, I'm
hope
pumped,
you all
dude.
like.
I'm stoked.
All right, so we'll be back in 2 weeks with our first episode of Mark Twain. Hope y'all are looking forward to that as well, but do remember, like always, ignorance is not stupidity, it is the absence of knowledge, and I do hope you all learned at least a little bit of something today.
See ya!
You've been listening to The Biographers. For more information, please visit thebiographerspodcast.com.